you can bring yourself back into balance or harmony. And what's interesting is because of the sheer pace of life in modern day society, most of us are running with somewhat of a vata imbalance. Maybe it's not who we are physically, but on the mental, emotional side, it's kind of easy to drop into that lane for a lot of us.
Ayurveda is a lot about how do we find this vibrancy, this joyfulness, this energy that I think ultimately we all want. We want more than just removing dis-ease in our body. We want this vibrancy. And I'm hearing a multi-pronged approach through diet, through lifestyle, through this flow, supplementation, which I firmly believe in, that it does take a few different avenues and approaches to how do we achieve this vibrancy. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wellness for Life. I'm your host, Niki Wolf, and today we have an incredible guest to the show, Dr. Shivani Gupta, an Ayurvedic practitioner for over 20 years, really does a good job of blending and fusing together Eastern and Western practices. She has a master's in Ayurvedic sciences and a PhD on turmeric. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Shivani.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I've got a chance to have a few conversations with her ahead of time, and just the knowledge and insights that she brings to the conversation of not just gut health, but the lens in an Ayurvedic approach is really fascinating. And for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with Ayurveda, I'd love to lay that foundation of what Ayurveda is and what they might want to be aware of in regards to their own body.
Sure. So Ayurveda is this entire system of medicine, health, and healing from India that's over 5,000 years old. And so most people have heard of acupuncture, which comes from traditional Chinese medicine, which is another beautiful ancient practice. And then over in India, we had Ayurveda. And Ayurveda basically shows us how to bring body, mind, and spirit into alignment. And that comes from having a really vibrant, healthy body, investing in our gut health, which also affects our mental health, and then bringing everything together so that we're vibrant and we're healthy and we are living at a vibration where everything is so good that we are in that spirit of serving others and taking care of everyone around us. And so I really love Ayurveda as a lifestyle. It's how you eat, when you eat, how you sleep, when you sleep. It's as simple as these kinds of pillars of health. And some of our main pillars are your dosha, or your individual mind-body constitution that's assigned to you, or it is your constitution at birth. And then your job is to kind of maintain that through life and not get too imbalanced from it. We teach about gut digestive fire as the center of all health and maintaining that like a campfire. Then we talk about circadian clock, circadian rhythm, and sleep, and how that's a key piece so we can live in rhythm with nature as opposed to going against nature. Then another big pillar is the super herbs and super spices. Those herbs and spices are powerhouses when it comes to our health. So when we're talking about supplements and the mineral and vitamin world, adding in those herbal formulations too. Then we talk a lot about diet, nourishment. How are you eating? When are you eating? Not just what you're eating, and how bringing that practice into place can be a game changer as well. And then finally, we teach a lot about like living in flow with this life and building a self-care practice that helps you consistently detox, but also keeps you vibrant and healthy as we deal with all the busyness of life.
Absolutely. I love that kind of unpacking of this. And one thing that I really pulled in your description is the vibrancy, because I think there's a lot of different types of healthcare now, and it's about relieving symptoms or kind of avoiding dis-ease. But it sounds like Ayurveda is a lot about how do we find this vibrancy, this joyfulness, this energy that I think ultimately we all want. We want more than just removing dis-ease in our body. We want this vibrancy. And I'm hearing a multi-pronged approach through diet, through lifestyle, through this flow, supplementation, which I firmly believe in, that it does take a few different avenues and approaches to how do we achieve this vibrancy. And you spoke a little bit about doshas, and the more I've dug into this, and, there's all these different quizzes, and I know you even have a quiz on what is your dosha. I love that you clarified that you were given this from birth, because I think when we are technically out of alignment, I just assumed, oh, my dosha changed. And we can get into kind of what doshas are for a little bit, but I always was like, I'm pitta. And these last few years, I'm like, no, I'm very vata. And I think that's not that it's changed. It's I'm out of alignment. So would you mind kind of like going back a little bit and what are doshas? What are those? Just a little explore what that looks like.
Sure. So your individual mind-body constitution from Ayurveda is based on the elements. Earth is made of elements, which means we're made of those elements. And so when you take the 5 elements, when it comes to vata, we pronounce it vata here in the West, the vata dosha is air and ether. And so what that means is a vata person is going to have a tendency to be thin and wiry, small boned, long features, oval face. They might be really tall or really petite. This person in their mind tends to go really fast. They're like a tornado. They just constantly run with their thoughts. They tend to be an energizer bunny. This is someone who has a tendency towards overwhelm and anxiety. They're just constantly in motion, like the wind. So you think of that wind energy and what it does, it's never stopping. Their digestion can tend to be irregular. Their sleep can tend to be irregular, again, because they're constantly in motion, even the mind. If you're not settled, your sleep and your gut could get disrupted. This is someone who can eat like a bird. So they never actually have to sit down for a real meal. They can just nibble and have tea and green juice all day and some vegetables, and they don't have to really eat like a really grounding meal. And so a vata person can have these tendencies towards poor sleep, anxiety, being so all over the place and never finishing what they start. But they're also the artists. They're the creators. So there's always these positives and negatives to every dosha. And it's so powerful when you understand what you are, because then you can forgive yourself for what you are instead of assuming society is right and that each of us is wrong. And then secondly, you can bring yourself back into balance or harmony. And what's interesting is because of the sheer pace of life in modern day society, most of us are running with somewhat of a vata imbalance. Maybe it's not who we are physically, but on the mental, emotional side, it's kind of easy to drop into that lane for a lot of us. And then you have the pitta dosha. Pitta people are fire with some water. And so a pitta person is going to be medium body, reddish skin tone, reddish hair, early graying. This is someone who is fiery in their personality, passionate. They're really ambitious. And then I use all the words to define a volcano, to define the pitta imbalances. So we erupt, we get angry, we get frustrated, we erupt on our loved ones, we get hangry, jealous, angry. And so pitta people really have to balance themselves, because otherwise you're going to destroy like all your closest relationships, or any relationship truly. And so pitta people need to, and we tend to be inflamed. So we have a tendency to love spicy, oily, hot foods, which are the things that keep us imbalanced. And our job is to hydrate well, keep our jets cooled down, balance ourselves like a nuclear reactor, don't get hangry, eat cooling foods. So it's funny how your medicine sometimes is what you're not willing to do in your own dosha. And we shouldn't vacation or be in burning heat all day. So pittas need to cool off in the summer, not get overheated. And then finally you have kapha. Kapha people are of the earth, bigger boned, stronger. They can put on muscle most easily compared to the others. They are round features, round face, round eyes, curly, oily hair. This is someone who has a more sluggish, slow metabolism, but they're very one thing at a time, one thought at a time. They speak more slowly. They're fiercely loyal. They're like the caretaking energy. This is someone who's so grounded, and when you hug them, you feel like you're hugging Mother Earth. Like they're just so grounding to you. So because the kapha has a sluggish metabolism, it's interesting. They go through their day, and once they sit down, they're not going to get up again. And so I love when people understand who their spouse is, because then sometimes you can realize it's not their fault. Like literally once a kapha sits, they're not going to get up because their energy is earth and water. So we have to make sure that they don't have, too much mucus in the system. They watch out for dairy, that they're not eating raw foods. They're eating easier to digest foods, cooked foods. And so each dosha has its own protocol. You can have a primary dosha and a secondary dosha. Some people are actually 3 doshic and balanced in all 3. And so it's really cool to take a dosha quiz and understand where you're at. And then my job is always, okay, wherever you're imbalanced, let's get you back to your original home base so you feel centered and grounded and aligned.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for pulling that apart. Now, what if somebody, because you mentioned, you can be a combination, and I think most people are, and I wonder how much overlaps of our society and our generation and our go makes us lean more into the vata, like you mentioned. Yeah. But what if you align more with the physical of something? So for instance, myself, I feel very physically pitta, but then emotionally, I feel very vata, digestion, vata. And so that sounds like there's an imbalance going, because when I read about vata, you want more of the fiery heating foods, at least for digestion. And I know we'll get into that, but pitta, you don't want to do that. So what happens if those overlap?
It's more complex. Then you have to really sit down and understand. So for example, I am a pitta. That's like my really dominant dosha. And then I would say on a normal day, my secondary would be vata. Just because I'm so high energy, I have the ability to dig in and just keep working and doing. But when I had kids, it really shifted me. I gained 45 pounds to have my first child. It just, and motherhood just put me in this guffa frame of mind for a long time. And I had people around me who were like, where's Shivani? Like, you were such an entrepreneur. Like, when are you going to get your mojo back? And it took time to finally align myself back into, I am a pitta. But modern day society is constantly tugging me left into vata, where between Instagram and the DMs on all sides, it's like you build success, and with success comes chaos. And that vata type energy of the world working 24/7 around you can be so ungrounding. And so it's like the biggest discipline to keep moving yourself into, okay, this is my dosha. I actually need to honor my dosha, stay balanced for my dosha, stay cool, calm, and collected, and grounded. And it's a daily work, because it's easy to get imbalanced sometimes. And so you do have to look at, are you going to balance the physical? Are you going to balance the mental? Or are you going to balance the emotional? And that's how I look at it. So for example, as a pitta, we tend to get hangry. And if I don't watch it, the end of my day, I call the witching hour, like the 4 to 7 slot, where if I have not eaten well, I will just start eating. And it's the same time that my 2 kids are home, and they're usually not doing anything I want them to do. And so we have this perfect explosive crash. And I'm always trying to figure out, like, how do you change that? What I've learned is the minute I'm not agreeing with my kids, I always reach for chocolate or something sweet. That's a pitta move, and also a vata move, because if you're anxious and stressed, sugar will cool down your system. And so every time now I look at it and I'm like, you could get coconut water. You could get peppermint tea. Or if you're going to have the dark chocolate with almonds, fine, but just know what you're doing here and why. And then come back to what is the balanced, healthy meal you want to have to be like in alignment with your food plans. So that's where it's so powerful, because if you understand why you're doing things, all of a sudden you can create such a big pattern interrupt that then forever supports you. So I'm just there to teach like the self-care rituals and foods and drinks and tools out of Ayurveda, where, yeah, you might be feeling like I'm physically this way and mentally that way and emotionally that way. But if it's the mental part that's triggering you, if you're mentally so vata, how do you quickly soothe that? It might just be in nature. It might not be a food or drink thing. So for me, nature's grounding. That's why I take evening walks every day. I know I need it, and that's my medicine.
Just because you might identify under one category, it doesn't mean like you need to balance, you pay attention to the physical, the mental, the digestive, all those components. Maybe it's like, what's the most pressing issue? And let's balance that first. Now, we're talking in the world of gut health, and a big conversation is on digestion. Yeah. And I know digestion looks different for all these different individuals, but these different categories. And I know you have an analogy kind of referring to this campfire. I'd love to explore that.
Sure. So in Ayurveda, we teach that gut digestive fire is called Agni. Agni is our word for fire. And so if you imagine that there's this fire in your belly, your job is to support that fire to do its main job. And what is the main job of digestion? Take what we're going to put in there, absorb it, assimilate it, divert it to the right tissues and places that need it. And if there are toxins or things that do not serve or whatever's left, we excrete it. And so what's interesting to me is I thought of it and I was like, well, isn't that a campfire? When you get to go outside for camping, you're going to take small, medium, and large branches to build the campfire. That's us building the nutrients and things we need to build a healthy campfire. Those are all our choices throughout the day. Are we eating processed foods or clean foods? Like, what are we doing to build a good fire? And then once you've built that good fire, You're not supposed to let it burn 24/7. If you go camping, you're going to open up the fire, use it for the meal, settle it down, but not turn it off. Open it again, use it for lunch, same thing again, dinner again. And then for the night, you're going to close it, but not put it out all the way so that the next morning you have this fire, you can just restart, rekindle. And so in that same way, what if you looked at your gut as this campfire you tended to every day? So in the morning, you hydrate, you get things moving, you get peristalsis started, so you have a regular daily bowel movement in the morning. What if then you had ginger lemon tea, or you used a tongue scraper and these little habits that ignite digestive fire and get you going?
Is a tongue scraper helpful for digestion?
Yeah. So tongue scraper is one of my favorite Ayurvedic self-care tools. When you gently scrape the tongue 7 to 14 times with a copper tongue scraper, what you're doing is all the body's organs, just like they're reflected on the bottom of the feet in reflexology, they're also reflected on the tongue. So you're gently massaging those organs. You're scraping it. So the ama, which was what we call toxins, the ama toxin buildup of the body is being gently scraped, gently massaged to release from the body. And it ignites digestive fire, gets you going.
And you specifically mentioned copper, because I use a tongue scraper, but it's like a silver. I don't know what the actual material is. Why copper?
So we always love copper in Ayurveda because it's remineralizing. It's antibacterial. So it's like a self-cleaning tool. It stays cleaner for longer. A lot of people buy steel ones, which is fine. Yeah. Copper is just our preferred metal.
Okay. So there's nothing wrong with it, but there's benefits behind using the copper. Okay. So you said 7 to 14 times.
Yes. So gently scrape the tongue 7 to 14 times and not too far up. You don't want to gag. And don't be too hard. Your taste buds are there. So it's also going to clear the taste buds so they can taste better, which is very nice.
Great.
And once you start that habit, you'll tell on the days you forget because your oral mouth feel will be different. And we know oral microbiome ties to gut microbiome. So we teach 2 self-care habits actually related to oral microbiome. One is tongue scraping. The other is oil pulling. And so oil pulling is putting 2 tablespoons of any food grade organic oil in your mouth. Could be coconut oil, almond oil, sesame oil is our preferred one, or olive oil, for example. And you put that oil in the mouth and hold it for 5 to 20 minutes. And I know that sounds like a long time, but you can multitask when you do the self-care habit. You can shower, get ready, make your coffee, whatever you're going to do. But you hold it and then you swish it around through your gums and teeth. So it has a chance to get through everything, collect all the toxins in your mouth. And when you spit it out, spit it in the trash can, not the sink, toilet, or shower. You'll clog your pipes. And so that's another great way to release the toxins out of the body way up here before we even enter the whole microbiome tract of the body.
And is there a preferred oil pulling first, tongue scraping?
I always do tongue scraping first, then oil pulling. And then I just quickly brush my teeth again because I don't want oil in my mouth.
Yeah. And so you mentioned sesame oil as the preferred. Is there a particular reason?
Yes. So sesame oil has a lot of benefits. It's antibacterial. It has vitamin E in it, a lot of vitamins and minerals in there that we like.
Great. And it tastes good.
Yeah. And it tastes good. Yeah. Untoasted sesame oil.
Okay.
And so, so you do tongue scraping, oil pulling, hydration if you need it to get peristalsis started for the morning. So you make sure you go to the bathroom. Then we love ginger lemon tea or aloe vera juice in the morning. Both are wonderful, like tinctures to kick off the day to kind of cleanse the gut and prepare the body for the day. And then you can go ahead and start your day. Some people are intermittent fasters, some aren't. In Ayurveda, we always had the 7 to 7 fast, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So there was always a 12-hour hold, and you can shrink that further if you want to based on your body. And then you have breakfast, small, healthy, nourishing meal. You have lunch, which is your biggest meal of the day, because on the circadian clock at the top, 10 to 2 is when you're at your pitta time of day. So you're most supported there for digestive fire being the strongest. So if you have foods that are hard to digest or super nourishing, like seeds and nuts and those kinds of things, that's actually the best time to eat them because you're most supported in their absorption. Then going through your day, we're not meant to snack all day and eat stuff all day. It's your 3 square meals, 1 snack added if you need it. Sometimes I need that 4 o'clock meal to hold me over, 4 o'clock snack. And then dinner is meant to be small and easy to digest and completed by 7 so that we have time to finish digesting it completely, to invest in perfect sleep from 10 o'clock onwards. Because again, we teach 10 to 2 on that circadian clock is when we're going to clear inflammation, clear the lymphatic system. That's what we want to use our fire for, not for digesting. And so that's a big point to make, because the average American is sleeping somewhere between 11 and 11:30, according to the statistics. And we're really giving up detoxification. And so because we're giving up the detoxing, then we're wondering, why are we a society that's so inflamed, have so much congestion? We have congestion of the lymph, liver issues, everything's just backed up. And so that understanding of, this is my fire and it's got to stop with food by 10, so it can switch over to cleaning and clearing, is how we'll run on a circadian clock and be healthier.
Absolutely. And I like that you mentioned lunchtime is your I say opportunity because I love food. I love eating. So it's like, that is my window to have something hearty. Or for me, I've always been like this. Salad is like my favorite food. I always said on my deathbed, I want a Greek salad. I could eat salad, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And like very, raw, cold kale, all these different ingredients in there. However, those ingredients, cold, raw vegetables, are not supporting my digestion right now. So at least it's not an all or nothing where I have to completely give it up, but to just adjust the time frame. I mean, I don't think most people are having a kale salad for breakfast, but, having it at lunch. And I've also heard adding other spicy things in, warming foods, apple cider vinegar, a lot of cracked black pepper. Are there any other methods you can do? Maybe you are struggling with digestion and it's not as optimal as you want it to be. What else can you be doing to change up? I mean, I'm sure having, instead of a salad, having something warm and, what's the word? Like umptuous, like very, like fatty and oily is probably going to be more optimal. But let's say we don't want to go all the way over there. What are some other things that we can incorporate to kind of help get that going again?
Well, when it comes to gut healing, Ayurveda always looks at it as, why is there an imbalance? Like, where is it coming from? It usually is different based on your dosha. A simple general practice is take out everything inflammatory, everything hard to digest, and let the gut reset itself. So we very much believe that the body is a self-healing mechanism. And the problem is we're running deficiencies, which is why we need a lot more vitamins and minerals, because we're just living in a society where our food is not giving us everything we need, or we're overdoing it. We've got too much processed stuff, inflammatory foods, things that just aren't working with our system. And so in Ayurveda, my recommendation is always, at the intersection of seasons, take a week, do a detox, or any time you can truly do a gut healing detox. And for that week, cut the top 5 inflammatory foods. Those can be, based on who you are, alcohol, sugar, red meat, gluten, and dairy. And some people will add on further corn, soy, peanuts, things like that can have a tendency.
Coffee.
I actually don't cut caffeine. I am one of those people. I've been to huge detox centers everywhere. I've taken my family many times because I always want to reduce their diabetes as much as I can. And when I get there, if I'm going to go through a huge detox on caffeine and suffer, I would only do that if I knew that I was going to give it up for some period. Like, if I know 2 days later I'm going to have my green tea anyway, why am I going to suffer through that for 2 days? In an ideal world, would we give up caffeine too? Yes, we would give it all up. But I limit how much I make people suffer.
Yeah, I like that. Yep, that's a good approach. And prioritize the main needs.
Yeah, because how it's already hard to detox. So if you're going to put that on top of it and deal with the headaches, that can be really tough.
Yeah. But I do think there is something to keep in mind of like how dependent, and I'm not putting this on you. I'm currently in the midst of it. A 1-year-old is like how dependent we are on the caffeine right now. And that's something that I'm keeping in mind. Am I gravitating to it at all times throughout the day when I'm feeling tired or overwhelmed? And I think that's ultimately any approach to healing is becoming aware and in tune with our body of like, what's out of balance, and really stepping back and looking at our lives. Are we spending so much time scrolling? Are we looking at screens? When things start to become out of the norm or the spectrum, or it just doesn't sit right, I think that's when we start having to make adjustments.
True. And to your point, if we are leaning on things too much, that's also a sign. So if you are living coffee cup to coffee cup, if you're drinking soda and just you're living on caffeine as your only source of energy, that's not vibrant health. So our goal would be, hey, I get it. You're going to get a withdrawal. Keep 1 or 2 cups a day. We would want no sugar, no dairy during that time. So that kind of changes things up. A lot of people move into black tea or matcha or green tea during a detox, which is better in many ways because we know tea has such good properties for you and antioxidant benefits. Yeah. And then I usually have people take khichdi. Khichdi is like a simple porridge out of Ayurveda. It's just split yellow lentils and white rice with a few spices. So we kind of move everyone into a very simple, light diet for about a week and just using spices and herbs and reducing inflammation, and then using things like ghee for gut oleation can really shift you from like, I'm inflamed, because I do this. If I'm traveling, I'm going to drink alcohol while I'm entertaining, and I'll do all the bad things. And system's inflamed and irritated. And then when I get back, I'll just drop the diet down to like really clean and simple, allow the gut to do its reset, and then you move forward. But I think what we forget as a society is like anytime you take antibiotics, anytime you travel, anytime you have a huge stressful event in life, gut will take a toll. And so how often are we rehealing the gut so that it's supported going forward?
You mentioned, a few different eating methods, having a small warming breakfast. And I don't know if maybe you mentioned warming, but to keep that fire going, I'm assuming breakfast is optimally going to be not fruit smoothies, not yogurts with frozen fruit in there. It's going to be something that's going to be warm.
Yes. In Ayurveda, we prefer warm foods. And we actually have a lot of rules around food combination. And most people most people in the West don't think of that. They're like, oh, I can eat anything with anything. And I'll have to pull up all those rules real quick. But in Ayurveda, we teach, like, for example, you wouldn't eat fruit with anything. Fruit doesn't go with anything at all. Fruit is meant to be separate. And so it's so interesting, this obsession with smoothies. I always think about it. I'm like, you can't mix things. So for example, cheese. Cheese does go with grains and vegetables, but cheese doesn't go with fruit, beans, eggs, milk, yogurt, or hot drinks.
Now, why is that? Like, why are those rules set in place?
Good question. So I'll take fruit as an example. When you eat fruit, it hits the body and digests so fast. And so if you think about it, and you can test this yourself. I've gone to really nice dinners where they're like, oh, you're gluten-free? We'll give you a fruit plate. So you've eaten this huge meal. Let's say it had cheese and bread and protein and everything in there, and it was delicious. Let's say it was a steak dinner. You've got that in there. I'm vegetarian, but let's say you've got that big old meal in. And then you eat like a bowl of fruit on top. This food down here is going to take forever to digest. You're going to need a couple hours. Hopefully you didn't finish that meal at 10 o'clock at night, because that's what you're going to be working on all night long, and it's going to destroy your sleep. But, and it happens to me sometimes, and I laugh if I eat like a late night Italian dinner out. I'm like, okay, you gave up that night of sleep. So that's going to process for a couple hours. The fruit doesn't need much time at all. It'll go fast. And so it becomes this like fermented, gassy thing sitting on top of the meal. It's going to get digested last, but it actually was done with its digestive process first. So really the message is eat fruit separate because it'll digest fast, or eat it first in any meal that you're going to eat, because it can be processed much more quickly than the rest. It's just about gas, bloating, fermentation, and
which not is a very common issue.
Yeah, and not having toxins, right? If we're going to do misalignment of food combination, the problem is the toxin buildup that forms because we didn't give the gut digestive fire everything in the right order to just process, assimilate, and excrete. Yeah. We're mixing it all up, and it doesn't have the ability to give us the right enzymes or strength to process it.
So can I put you on the spot for a second and ask you a question? So we just finished, and I dove into so much research on blood sugar, and we've spent so much time exploring that and how to eat to optimize blood sugar. Yeah. But when I start kind of pulling into the gut health, it's really cool, this intersection between blood sugar and gut health, because you can optimize your blood sugar, but then your gut health is completely out of whack, and vice versa. And one thing that I'm hearing the more I explore Ayurveda is this principle of having fruit by itself. But what alarms go off in my head, and I totally hear you, because years ago, there's different speeds in which things digest, and it's kind of like you're I mean, you think about your colon and your intestines, it's kind of like a one-way track. If you have steak, it's not like stuff's going to sneak around and, the fruit's going to go first. So I do get that. Yeah. But then in the blood sugar realm, when I think, and maybe there's not an easy answer. Maybe it's like, what's the highest priority? And let's focus on that. Yeah. But I guess ultimately to get to my question is, having fruit by itself, I just think blood sugar, blood sugar, blood sugar. Yeah,
me too.
Where does Ayurveda stand in that? And maybe you said there's no things you can eat with fruit.
No, nothing. And that's where there's a contradiction now. And it's so fascinating to me because I study and read everything. So I got a CGM and I'm reading everything about blood sugar, and my family's all diabetic. So diabetes is like my number one thing I've worked so hard to prevent in this life. And so whenever I get my blood work back and it's not optimal, if it's like high cholesterol, this and that, then I make it my mission to use metrics and try to fix every aspect of what could be causing the trouble. And you're right. So we are taught now, definitely don't eat fruit alone. Definitely watch your blood sugar levels. Blood sugar levels will impact weight gain and everything else. And Ayurveda is 5,000 years old. There's no one to change the opinion of Ayurveda from its fruit separate idea. So I really do think of it as, okay, if I'm going to have fruit with something, I do sometimes have smoothies. And so I'll pick one fruit. I'm like, okay, if you're going to have smoothies, it's blueberries only. You can't be like fruit and mango and blueberries and protein powder and all the things. And I'll do like a small dose. I'll be like half a cup because you just want flavor that's happy, but limit it. And so and I won't put dairy in there. I'm like, okay, well, don't over mix things up because it's anti-fruit with anything. So that's the thing is you sometimes have to compromise on the rules. I would say 90% of the time I try not to compromise on the Ayurvedic rules, and then 10%.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's like, you have to, take the information and utilize it to the best of your ability, but also, find the balance that works best for you. I remember I was working with a naturopathic doctor, and she's like, yes, technically, yes to both. Yes. But what is your bigger problem right now? Is it blood sugar or is it gut health? And there was times where it was blood sugar. And then there was times like, for instance, if I'm going to work out or maybe not immediately after, but if I'm going to work out after, I don't have to be, and I'm very cognizant of blood sugar. It's not like I'm eating, a ton of bread and all this stuff. Like I'm eating lots of protein, lots of fat, and lower carb. So I don't have to be so paranoid. So maybe that is an opportunity, is looking at what is the bigger problem and what should we focus on more. And then to your point of like, I don't know, I think I naturally just am all or nothing. So it's like, okay, it's either this or it's this, but there could be a gray area of like, to your point, maybe not have fruit with the worst thing, like have it with a steak, so just sitting and fermenting there, but maybe something that also digests relatively quick that can help balance out that protein. So I appreciate your response to that.
For sure. And that's the thing is nowadays, the messages are so extreme. Like I follow all the health and wellness people who I see at all the conferences where I speak at. And then I'm like, oh gosh, the carnivore diet says this. And then the, paleo and then Ayurveda. And the thing is, Ayurveda always says middle ground, moderation. Everything is good that's made on earth. So you should explore what's right for you. You have a different doshic combination than everybody. So eat for your dosha, eat for your season of life, eat for the season you're living in. Outdoor seasons matter. So are you in a cold climate or a hot climate? So I really do, no matter what I read online, I really always tune back into what's intuitively good for me. And then what do my numbers show? Because the numbers are a good metric to understand. Like, are we on the right track or are we still off base? And do we need to calibrate even tighter with our health? Because we can't be so open and casual about it.
Absolutely. Find your framework, follow that, but also keep in mind the season of life. And I love our company LifeSeasons is we create products for all seasons of life because postpartum is going to look different than your 20s when you're, in college and thriving and have all this energy versus your 50s, and everything's going to look different. So your needs are going to be different. And, that can change month to month or year to year, but adjusting and I think being in tune with what your body needs in that season, I think is going to be so important.
Absolutely.
And I think too, I just had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman about the carnivore diet, because again, all or nothing I haven't done carnivore, and I think I'm in this gray area, which is odd for me to say from a lifetime of being all or nothing, like very OCD, like putting myself in boxes. I did intermittent fasting, I did keto, I did raw vegan, I did all the things. And ultimately in my point of life and the experience that I've done, when you drastically remove something, to your point of what is created on this earth, something of nature, when you're drastically removing that for a long period of time, I think you're going to end up with some unwanted consequences, or it's a seasonal change, like keto for things like seizures and more serious conditions.
Right.
But I think when you are planning on going into, whether we want to call it a diet or a manifestation of the way you eat for a long period of time, I don't know. I wish I could, and I don't know if I would change anything, because I think it's important that I went through all that. But I think knowing that this might not give me the ultimate results for a continued amount of time. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's seasons.
Makes so much sense, because I've been to places like Hippocrates Health Institute. It's here in West Palm Beach, and I live in South Florida. And I took my mom there for 3 weeks, and it was very powerful as a treatment plan to reduce diabetes. So she went from 14 units of insulin to 4 at every meal for years, and she's maintained that. That's phenomenal. So to me, we can use all sorts of different treatment plans to significantly reduce inflammation, support the immune system, heal the gut, heal the body. The problem is we all want a one-size-fits-all magic pill. And it's frustrating because there is none. And even I would love one that's just like, this is it. Yeah. But unfortunately, you're right. Anytime you go like so far left and so far right, you'll cause deficiencies, and you'll thus cause gut dysbiosis. And so even I have my own functional medicine practitioner team, and I've gone to them for years. I went through one, now I'm on the next one. And we have these conversations around, if you are too healthy, like in some ways I'm too healthy because I'm so obsessed with health, that I'll narrow my diet right down to here. I only eat these like 15 foods, done. When I know perfectly well, nutrient density, nutrient variety, and eating seasonally is the important part. But when you do that, all of a sudden you'll see, if you look at your blood work in detail, you have deficiencies. You'll start being deficient in all these vitamins, all these minerals, all these things. So it's just such a powerful argument and reminder that we're meant to eat diversity. We're not meant to eat some narrow diet of any kind, because inevitably you'll damage your own gut health. You won't have the small, medium, and large branches. You'll have just picked one, and that never creates something healthy and good.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And the Netflix series, I don't know if you've seen it, Hack Your Health. It is incredible. I actually was reading her book. I think her book is called Gut Matters or something like that. And her book, I can't remember the name of the gal who wrote it. But even in the book, it was like so easy to follow along, and really did a good job of simplifying the science. When you watch this documentary, she just did an incredible job to simplify what's going on in the gut. And there's all these like little creatures that they demystify what the gut looks like. But ultimately, your gut microbiome are all these different bacteria in the body, and they need different foods in order to thrive. And if we're not giving them those ingredients, it starts attacking our mucosal lining, creating holes in our gut. And that's what we get, leaky gut, and we get all these issues. And it's so fascinating to follow up blood sugar conversation with gut health, because I was dedicated so much time to blood sugar. And then I started struggling with gut health because I wasn't feeding my body the diversity, like you said. Everything, all the information now, it's coming back to diversity, trying to aim for up to 20 different varieties. And I don't know if they throw fruits into this category. I don't really like the idea of putting fruits and vegetables in the same category. I'm personally not a fan of that. But I think having a variety of vegetables, having a variety of fruits in a week, not just, just the banana or just the broccoli, really mixing it up, because our body needs all these different ingredients and micronutrients and polyphenols in order to thrive and function. And so I love that you touched into diversity. Totally got to put that on your agenda for this weekend. Hack Your Health. It is done so well. I think you'll love it.
Nice. And you know what you just reminded me of? Since the pandemic, I started ordering my groceries online. I have Instacart. So I go through my Costco, then I go through my Sprouts. I can, if I don't have something I need from there, I'll go to Publix. But you have a buy it again feature. And so it's so easy to just keep buying it again, buying it again. And I have little kids and they are very narrow in their viewpoints on food. They're like, I eat tangerines. I don't eat bananas. And so all of a sudden you get so narrow in the household diet. The only time we get diversity is if we drive to the grocery store. And I'm going through a season in my life where it's just too busy. I do not want to go to the store. But it's by going to the store that you'll see, oh, like we're about to hit summer. Like summer's my favorite season because I'm a Pitta dosha. And if I'm there, I'll be like, I can pick up one of every kind of plum, one of every kind of peach. I can have watermelon. I can have pomegranate. I can have mangoes. So what if as society, we're losing nutrient diversity because we're forgetting about the seasons and we're just not going to our farmers markets and our health food stores to pick up good, healthy, fresh, unique produce. And that's the homework. Just go.
Yeah. I could not agree more with that. I'm with you. We do Instacart and we've done it for a while. And I'm curious. It's just my husband and I, and we have a 1-year-old, and our grocery bill is between $200 and $300 a week. And we don't eat out. This is just from food that we purchase. We don't even eat everything organic, our meats and our eggs. And, I'll buy raw milk. That stuff we do organic, but everything else isn't. So it just blows my mind. And so absolutely, we did Instacart for years. And I'm like, you know what? I need to start going back to the store, save on a little bit of cost, but I totally get the convenience. Absolutely. But to your point, is we are leaning so deep in convenience and we're just clicking that buy again, buy again, buy again. So I'm trying to diversify the ingredients that I'm taking in. And one thing that and maybe this is my homework, is start focusing on what is in season. And I don't know, I lived in Santa Barbara for some time and I was raw vegan and like the seasons and food was all a very normal conversation, but I've gotten so far from that. It's kind of packaged in Trader Joe's and it's just kind of like everything's in a box and very structured. And I think getting back to maybe we don't have to go all the way over here where we start growing everything on our own and we're making our sourdough and fermenting our kombucha and all this stuff. Maybe there is a happy medium. What can we introduce this week that is a little bit more seasonal? Can we introduce 2 new vegetables and 2 new fruits? And granted, my daughter's 1 year old, but I get when she gets a little bit older, making it more of an adventure of let's go in the store and I want you to pick out 1 new fruit you haven't tried yet and 1 new vegetable you haven't tried yet. How can we integrate mixing these up? And if you're listening, I'd love to hear from you guys of like, what are ways and methods you do to mix up and create a diversity of fruits and vegetables and all kinds of food in the diet?
Absolutely. I take my kids and I tell them, you have your own shopping cart, buy everything you like. And usually, of course, they end up in like the fun sections. But I'm like, in the fruit and veggie section, everyone has to pick up something new. Sometimes we'll have weekends where we pull recipes. So my kids love Asian food. We eat out for Thai food all the time. And they found these rainbow spring rolls. So it became a little too expensive, but we went to like Trader Joe's and the Asian grocery store. We bought everything. I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be like so $400 in rainbow spring rolls, but okay. Yeah. Buy everything. But we made them and they were delicious and they had sprouts and bok choy and all this stuff I would never normally use. And I thought, wow, what if we brought that into the circulation? What if every week? To me, Asian food's actually my best way to bring in diversity because it's the only place where they're open to all the vegetables they're served. But to make it at home is our opportunity to make it healthier and cleaner. So I love that because again, the gut microbiome, from everything I've learned from all the companies and founders I've met, if we're not going to create this diverse garden, like if you were going to, the analogy I'm always given is, imagine your front of your home garden. You'd want high trees, medium trees, low trees, beautiful, colorful flowers. Like you could want this beautiful, diverse look. That's the same thing as your gut microbiome. So you have to feed it for that. We have to eat more fiber to support the gut. So really just bringing that analogy home to imagine your gut digestive fire as this campfire that you honor, revere, and build and have control over is a great way to kind of bring back that power and say, what am I going to feed it to build it to be so strong and diverse and robust so that when I do want to go out and have a fun meal with a glass of wine, I've got the digestive fire to handle that and process it, and we move right along. Because nowadays, I think we have such weak Agni, weak fires, that we're having problems with everything. People have so much sensitivity. I myself can't process gluten when I'm here in the United States. I can only eat it abroad in Europe. So I wish we could all build these campfires that are so strong, toxins gone, system healthy and robust. And that's what we get that's how you build vibrancy. Mental health, physical health, emotional health is all supported by gut digestive fire coming through so strong.
Absolutely. And I think as you say this, I always try to pull back to like root cause. And when I look at this pendulum or this cycle of what's really starting. So we tend to eat the same foods. Yes. And I'm just saying from my own experience, but I wonder if others can relate. We tend to eat the same foods because it's convenient. It's on a structure. We meal prep. It fits in. We're eating good quality food. It's healthy. And so we put it into this framework that it's kind of this meal prep. We're doing meal prep because we're short on time. We're go. There's so much on our plate. Kids going here. So we need to optimize. And I think when I pull back the layers of this cycle, it's because we're so busy. I know. We're so busy. We're packing our days with so much. We're saying yes to a ton of things. And I think if we go back into a world where we have the freedom and flexibility to create new recipes and have fun in the kitchen and be, dance to music, it's because there's no agenda. There's no place we have to be. This is personally for me where I feel like this is one reason I'm getting stuck in this cycle is because life is so busy. And when I say life is busy, I'm making it busy.
Correct.
And that's for me, the root cause, I think, of why my food isn't diversified. So that's going to be my homework for today. Dr. Shivani, do you have anything that's pulling at your heartstrings of what you're going to do differently?
Yes. Now that you said that, my kids are 10 and 13. So we already went through that phase that most of us go through of like, kids have to do everything and try everything so they can be great. My kids have already done everything. And I realized in the pandemic, my biggest medicine for my children is that we move in nature every day, more than being over-programmed. And so I let go of being programmed and having too many activities for them. They have some soccer. I need them to move. But it's really been a game changer because now we have more space in our schedule. And I block the weekends and hold that for what you're talking about, which is like ease. I want ease and flow at this phase of my life. I don't want chaos and too much going on, especially because my work life is so busy. So I think the homework for me is bring in the recipes and the cooking, because I've been struggling with that too. Like, who has time to cook? Who has time to innovate? Obviously, we have to just eat what I decide is the program here. But that one example of the rainbow spring rolls, like that was beautiful. And I know they loved it and enjoyed it. And I brought that magic of food and ingredients, and they have sovereignty in choosing those ingredients, and they had an impact choosing those recipes. So just bringing that magic back can be the best way to bring so many multifaceted, multidimensional benefits like diversity, all the things we talked about from health, but also from a family health standpoint, like bringing the joy back and the vibrancy into the home instead of it being so separate,
I love that so much. And it's funny, as you're listening, before we hit record, I felt like in shambles, my eyes twitching. I'm like just exhausted. And I asked Dr. Shivani, like, what fills your cup? And I feel like this conversation, I'm walking away, honestly, even being under screens and lights, I feel like this really filled my cup and I feel ready for the rest of the day. It took a slightly different turn, but not only do I feel like we were able to get this insight on Ayurveda, on the digestive fire, but rekindle, that kind of like went with the analogy, but rekindle this joy and this excitement and coming back to the way I think God intended for all of this to be, for these vibrant lives. And what does it look like to be vibrant in your own eyes? I so appreciated this conversation. I know we've touched upon all kinds of things. One is where can individuals find more information about you and the incredible work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So my website is my name, shivanigupta.com, ShivanIGupta. And I'm at dr.shivanigupta on Instagram and all the social channels.
Fantastic. And any lasting pieces you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Yes, my last message is your gut digestive fire is yours, and you have the power to build it up to be so strong. And if you want more energy, more vibrancy, better skin, better hair, if you want your brain to be on fire and working on all cylinders, that's where gut digestive fire comes in. So take the steps, take great supplements, do the work, because it never ever, it always repays you to focus on gut health as the first priority.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today. I really appreciate it. And I think our listeners are going to gain a lot of insight from it.
Absolutely. Thank you.